Expeditions, that's the name of Embark Studios' alternative to having mandatory gear wipes in Arc Raiders. It's been announced in a developer blog post from Virgil Watkins, Arc Raiders design director. So let me give you my thoughts about it. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, just know that I'm a member of Embark Studios' content creator program. They don't sponsor this video though, and as always, I can say whatever I like here, but I've tagged this video as a promotion to keep that relationship transparent. In a slightly Tarantino timeline, I'm going to start this video with the end of the dev blog post because I think it says something that is super important for us as a community to all keep in mind when considering expeditions. Virgil wrote, "While any and all of this is subject to change between now, launch, and post-launch, that is about the shape of it right now. We hope that by making the reset mechanic voluntary and properly incentivized, we can observe two results. 1. Players who are highly engaged can experience the game fresh on a regular cadence while accruing some benefits. 2. Players who have less time to dedicate to the game don't have their progress reset outside of their control. They are always able to keep moving forward and at their own pace if they so choose. It's not a silver bullet and won't achieve the clean break that a mandatory global reset does, but it does aim to be more equitable to all players. Wherever possible, we want to value your time spent in the game as much as you do. Of course, this is a complex topic, so we'll be keeping an eye on the discussion around this message and follow up as necessary. So hold that part of the message in mind as we go through this. Let's very briefly set the scene for this announcement, as I know there are loads of players out there for whom Arc Raiders is the first extraction shooter they've played. Bear with me for a moment if you've heard this before. Over time in extraction shooters, good players will start to accumulate massive amounts of gear in their stash. That means that players can and do become more blasé about pushing PvP encounters because they have less fear about losing their gear when they have a massive stash to fall back on, and that can change how the game feels overall for less well-equipped players in a pretty negative fashion. The solution to this is to have some process in place where players' stashes are reduced back to either nothing at all or very low amounts of gear. Commonly, extraction shooter developers do this by enforcing a mandatory full wipe of gear on a regular or semi-regular basis. The massive downside of mandatory wipes is that players who play the game less often or who just naturally progress more slowly have the opportunity for in-game play taken away from them simply because they have their gear wiped before they have a chance to accumulate enough of it. So Embark Studios has come up with an alternative solution to mandatory wipes called Expeditions that allows for highly geared players to have their stash reset and low and medium stash players to remain unaffected. It allows for more casual players or players who are limited on time to play the game to build up their stash to end-game levels on their own time frame and then voluntarily wipe when they're ready. So, how does it work? There are already loads of videos out there reading the wall of text directly from the dev blog post, and because I apparently have a well-recognized habit of doing that already, I'm instead just going to put it into my own words. Expeditions tie directly into the lore of Arc Raiders. Essentially, it's preparing and then sending your raider away on a one-way trip out of Speranza, through the tunnels and beyond the Rust Belt. As much as it would be amazing, this doesn't sound like an actual trip you get to take in the game with any sort of gameplay involved. It's just a process you go through before kissing your current raider goodbye forever. Anyhow, the expedition process is cyclical, completed during what will usually be a period of roughly 8 weeks. But in the first instance following Arc Raiders launch, it'll actually be a period of just over 6 weeks from the game's launch on October 30 through to December 14, where you'll have the opportunity to start contributing towards your expedition project. This appears to be a 6-part process. A video included in the dev blog shows us the first 2 stages, where you build the first 2 stages of a pod-like caravan for your raider to travel through the tunnels and away from the Rust Belt. Stage 1 is building the foundation, so the base structure and frame of the caravan, which is built by supplying metal parts, rubber parts, plastic parts, and steel springs. Then you move on to the core systems that require wiring, batteries, arc alloy, and cooling fans. From these first two stages, we might presume that stages 3 through 6 add additional elements to the caravan, like maybe a sleeping quarters, and even adding food, weapons, and ammo, which would be a pretty logical way to actually tie in emptying your stash. Once you complete the stages, you then have a 1-week window to finalize the project, which in this first instance post-launch, Embark states is from December 15 to 20, which is actually only 6 days, not a full week, so don't get caught out there. If you don't complete the stages in time, do not fear. Your progress won't be lost, and you can finalize the project during the next cycle in another 8 weeks or so. And when you're done, and I just thought of this, imagine if the final moment of the entire project is a cinematic of your raider having to say goodbye to Scrappy. And then your raider is gone, and you start anew. You lose anything related to your character's progress, so that's levels, skills, all your inventory, your workshop, and crafting capabilities. You keep earned or purchased cosmetics, awards, achievements, and rankings. So that's anything solely in the metagame or involving real money. I'm interested to know how completing an expedition will affect your Raider Den. I mean, to me, the Raider Den seems like a great place to show off some of the rewards from completing expeditions, which I'll come to shortly. So I'd be surprised if the Den gets reset. Anyhow, after completing an expedition, you'll have a brand new Raider, but you'll get to skip the majority of the onboarding and tutorial steps that you went through as a first-time new player. So that's the things like unlocking maps, which you previously did as you played through the early game. These will automatically be available from the start of the fresh reset. But all of these things don't really provide you with reasons to take on an expedition. Why might you want to do that? Well, aside from the thrill of starting fresh, there are also incentives. Embark are still finalizing the exact benefits and rewards, but they say that there will be permanent account unlocks for each completed expedition. It's not really clear what these unlocks relate to yet. Unique cosmetic rewards for each completed expedition. That's a pretty obvious one, which I think most of us assumed for some time would be connected to any voluntary wipe. Account buffs that are applied to the duration of the following expedition cycle and sequential completions of the expedition project increase the magnitude of these buffs up to a limit. So this is a massively important one, and Embark specifically make a point around this, saying, one point to drive home is that we are being very careful about the nature of these benefits. Completing a reset should never give a player a power or combat advantage over anyone who has not completed a reset. Initially, these benefits will center around cosmetics and bragging rights, quality of life, and smoothing out some aspects of progression for those who have gone through a reset. Cosmetics and bragging rights should be pretty obvious things, and I'd expect are things that'll make you stand out from the crowd who haven't reset. But quality of life and smoothing out of some aspects of progression for those who have gone through a reset sounds less obvious, and I think we'll have to wait for specifics on that. Of course, by having the 6-week lead up for the first expedition, Embark could be buying themselves a bit of time to finalize everything here. The big questions then are, will the incentives be enough to tempt almost everyone? And what happens if a lot of people choose to ignore expeditions and keep their massive stashes? Will those people start to feel like they're missing out on something and eventually cave in? What rewards that haven't been specified yet might Embark include to make sure people choose to take on an expedition? All of that aside, and this harks back to those words from Virgil that I mentioned near the start of this video, this is all subject to change. And I think the key takeaway here is that Embark are trying something new, something other than mandatory wipes, which I think is fantastic because it presents the opportunity for all players in the game to make it through to end game stashes in their own time, while rewarding those who choose to wipe. A final thought. You know what would actually be really cool? If the Arc Raiders community provides really constructive feedback to Embark to help them make expeditions better, because even if expeditions aren't perfect to start with, down the track, a revision of it might be way better for everyone than going back to some form of mandatory wipe, which is such a blunt instrument to deal with gear inflation. I'm cautiously optimistic about this and really interested to see where Embark takes it. Thanks for watching this video to the end. A big thank you to the members of my channel for their ongoing support, especially my Black Tier members TJ and Thoronike17. And of course to Embark Studios for having me as a member of their content creator program. Both are greatly appreciated. Do the usual YouTube business if you want to see more videos from me from now on. Come and join us on the Datopia Discord if you want to hang out or you want to find others to squad up with in Arc Raiders. There's a link in the description. Give a like or comment as you see fit, and enjoy the rest of your day. Kia kaha. Stay strong.
Everybody knows the world ain't right. Down on your knees, get up and fight.